A broke black woman, confined to a hospital bed, became the only person who knew a billionaire was about to be buried alive. The air conditioner droned overhead. Amara Layton lay awake beneath the flicker of the heart monitor. Pain throbbed through her side, but that wasn't what kept her from sleep. It was the voices, faint, filtered through the vent above. First, she thought it was nurses. Then came a voice, deep, sharp, unforgiving. "The compound's working. In 72 hours he'll be brain dead. We sign the papers. We bury him." A second voice followed, calm, certain. "No one will question it. The family wants silence." Her blood ran cold. They were talking about Lucien Voss, Seattle's most powerful man. She pulled the blanket to her chest, frozen. A woman with nothing now held a secret that could save a life, or destroy hers. Would you stay quiet, or risk everything for a man you've never met? Segment 2. The first sensation. The air in the hospital felt heavier now. Amara lay still, eyes fixed on the dim ceiling, trying to convince herself she had imagined it. But the voices came again, sharper this time, carried through the vent like whispers from another world. "He'll be declared brain dead in 72 hours, one voice said, calm and sure, as if reading from a script. The words slid through the silence like ice. Her chest tightened. She wanted to move, to call for someone, but fear pinned her to the bed. The voices went on, their tones measured, businesslike, the kind that didn't belong in a hospital at 2 a.m. Amara's fingers gripped the edge of her blanket. Her mind fought to explain it away. Maybe it was a movie, maybe a dream. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. The clarity of those voices was too real, too cruel. The monitor beside her beeped faster. She closed her eyes, hoping the sound would fade, but the words echoed inside her skull. Brain dead. Bury him. She pressed her palms against her ears, trembling. In that sterile, quiet room, fear was no longer just in her head. It had a voice. Then she heard it. A name that froze her blood. Lucien Voss. Her eyes snapped open. The voice said it again, quieter this time but unmistakable. Everyone in Seattle knew that name. The brilliant billionaire, the golden face of Voss Industries. Amara's pulse quickened as her memory filled with flashes. News clips, magazine covers, smiling photographs of Lucien shaking hands with world leaders, children from charity schools hugging him. The man the media called the billionaire who tried to change the world. She stared at the vent, her breath shallow. Why would anyone want him dead? And why here, in this hospital? The voices continued, fading in and out like a cruel rhythm. His family's agreed to a private burial. No autopsy. Amara felt her throat tighten. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. A clean, clinical execution wrapped in silence. Her hand went to the call button, but she stopped halfway. Who would believe her? A broke patient on painkillers, overhearing something through the vents? She let her hand fall. The truth was now a weight on her chest, and she was the only one carrying it. Amara pressed her palm to her chest as if she could slow her heart down by force. The room felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in. "They're killing him," she whispered into the dark. Saying it out loud made it real. Fear surged through her veins, hot and dizzying. She wanted to scream, to tell someone, but every possibility ended the same way. No one would believe her. Who would listen to a woman like her? Her mind raced through choices she didn't want to make. Stay silent and live with it? Or speak up and risk being called delusional, or worse? She closed her eyes and saw the face from the news. Lucien's easy smile, the kind eyes behind it. The thought of that man being buried alive twisted her stomach. She bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. Silence felt like safety, but it also felt like betrayal. Amara curled up on her side, gripping the thin blanket as if it could hold her conscience together. Somewhere down the hall, machines hummed and footsteps echoed, ordinary sounds that now felt wrong. In that sterile world of white walls and secrets, she was alone with a decision no one should ever have to make. When dawn broke, the light spilling through the blinds was gray and thin. Amara hadn't slept. Every word from the night before still rang in her head. She sat up slowly, her stitches pulling at her side. Her phone lay on the bedside table. For a moment she stared at it, debating. Then she opened the browser and typed the name that had haunted her all night: Lucienne Voss. Images filled the screen. Articles, interviews, awards. Lucienne smiling beside solar panels, shaking hands with volunteers, giving scholarships to underprivileged kids. Headlines read, "Tech Visionary Donates Millions to Global Education." He wasn't the man they described in the vent. He was everything opposite. The contrast hit her hard. Amara scrolled through photos of him speaking about hope, about building a better world. Her throat ached. If this man could do all that good, why would someone want to erase him? Her reflection stared back at her from the dark phone screen. Tired eyes, messy hair, a hospital gown. She looked nothing like a hero. But deep inside, something shifted. She couldn't unhear what she'd heard, and somehow she knew silence would haunt her more than fear ever could. By morning, exhaustion had hardened into resolve. Amara Layton sat hunched over her phone, scrolling through article after article, searching for anyone connected to Lucienne Voss. Then, one headline caught her eye. Lucienne's lifelong legal counsel, Elias Ward, speaks on philanthropy and ethics in business. She tapped the link. His face appeared. A distinguished black man in his 60s, calm eyes, the kind that made people listen. The caption read, "Founding Partner, Ward and Partners Law Group." Something in her chest stirred. If anyone would believe her, it would be him. She swung her legs over the bed, grimacing as a pain shot through her stitches. The nurse warned her she wasn't cleared to leave. Amara signed the release form anyway, scrawling her name with shaking hands. She couldn't explain, only that time was running out. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. She pulled her thin sweater tight and started walking toward downtown Seattle, guided only by a name on her screen and the pounding truth in her head. Lucienne Voss had 72 hours left. She whispered it under her breath like a prayer and a warning. Someone had to listen, and she was willing to bleed to make them hear. The glass tower of Ward and Partners gleamed like ice against the gray Seattle sky. Amara stood at the entrance, small against the world of wealth and silence. Her hospital wristband still clung to her arm. Inside, the lobby smelled of money. Polished floors, expensive perfume, quiet power. The receptionist barely looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" Amara hesitated. "No, but it's urgent. I need to see Mr. Ward. It's about Lucienne Voss." The woman's smile thinned. "Mr. Ward doesn't take walk-ins." Something inside Amara broke through her fear. Her voice rose, trembling but firm. "They're going to kill him. If you don't tell him I'm here, he'll be dead by tomorrow." Heads turned. Conversation stopped. The room fell still. The receptionist blinked, startled, then picked up the phone. A pause, then her expression changed. "The 6th floor," she said quietly. "He'll see you now." Amara's knees nearly gave out with relief. As she stepped into the elevator, the polished doors closed on the whispering lobby. She didn't care what they thought of her clothes or her voice. For the first time since that night, someone was listening. The office smelled faintly of leather and old books. Elias Ward stood by the window, his posture calm, his eyes sharp. Amara stopped just inside the doorway, unsure whether to sit or speak. "Tell me everything," he said. The steadiness in his tone loosened her chest. She began to speak. About the hospital, the vent, the voices, the plan to bury Lucienne alive. Her words tumbled out unevenly, her throat dry, her hands shaking. Ward didn't interrupt. He listened, silent except for the faint creak of his chair. When she mentioned Dr. Kellen, his face changed. Just slightly, but enough. He turned toward the window, thinking. "You're sure of what you heard?" he asked. Amara nodded. "Every word." Ward exhaled slowly, then picked up his phone. "Dr. Kellen has been the Voss family physician for 15 years, he said quietly. "I never would have suspected." He set the phone down and looked at her again. "You've done the right thing, Miss Layton. But if what you're saying is true, we don't have much time." For the first time, Amara felt something close to hope. Someone finally believed her. Elias Ward leaned forward, his hands clasped. "There's something you should know." Amara held her breath. "Lucien was planning to change his will," Ward said. "He was going to restructure the company, cut his brother Darius's control, and appoint an independent board." Amara frowned. "And Darius didn't like that." "Not at all," Ward replied. "When Lucien collapsed last week, Darius insisted on handling everything personally. Now the company, and the inheritance, are in his hands. And conveniently, Lucien is dying." The words sank in like ice. It wasn't just greed. It was betrayal. Ward's voice hardened. "We can't go to the police yet. We need proof. But if what you heard is real, we have less than 3 days before they declare him dead and bury him." Amara's mouth went dry. "Then we have to stop them," he nodded. "We will. But from this moment on, everything you do is dangerous." Amara met his eyes. "He's already dying. I can handle dangerous." Ward gave a small, grim smile. "Then let's save a life, Miss Layton." That night, the storm outside Seattle thickened. Elias Ward worked the phones with a precision born of urgency. Judges, doctors, court clerks. Every call was a fight against time. Amara sat quietly across the room, her bandaged hand clutching a cup of untouched coffee. She watched him move like a man who carried the weight of justice on his shoulders. By midnight, he hung up the last call and exhaled. "We have it," he said. "A court order for an independent medical evaluation. Dr. Chen from Stanford will examine Lucien in the morning." "How long will that take?" she asked. Ward looked at the clock. "Less than 72 hours before burial. We're racing the grave." Amara's pulse quickened. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Ward gathered the papers, sliding them into a leather folder. "From now on, you stay close. If Darius learns we know, he'll move faster." She nodded, standing despite the ache in her body. "Then we move faster too." Ward gave a brief, approving look. "Good. You're braver than you realize, Miss Layton." Amara glanced at the dark window. "No," she whispered, just desperate to see a man breathe again. By morning, Dr. Paul Chen, the independent toxicologist, arrived at St. Helena Hospital under court order. His presence drew stares from staff who suddenly avoided eye contact. Amara followed beside Elias Ward, her steps unsteady but firm. In Lucien's private suite, machines beeped in slow rhythm. His body was still, pale under white sheets. Dr. Chen moved with quiet focus, drawing samples, checking charts, reading monitors. Minutes stretched thin. Then he looked up. "This compound," he said, holding a syringe toward the light, "isn't standard. It mimics cerebral failure, but it's synthetic, designed to suppress brain activity until readings flatline." Elias frowned. "Can it be reversed?" Dr. Chen hesitated. "If we act quickly, yes. But whoever did this knew exactly how to make death look natural." Amara felt her stomach turn. "So he's not dying?" "No," Dr. Chen said softly, his gaze dark. "He's being silenced." The words filled the room like smoke. Lucien wasn't fading away. He was being erased on purpose. Amara reached for the side of the bed, her hand trembling near his. "Hold on," she whispered. "Someone finally knows." Outside the room, the first whispers of danger began to spread. Across the city, Darius Voss stood by his office window, phone pressed to his ear. His jaw tightened as his informant spoke. "An independent doctor?" he repeated. "Who authorized that?" When the answer came, his expression froze. "Ward," he hissed. "Of course." He turned to his assistant. "Call Kellen. We move tonight. The declaration happens before midnight." At St. Helena, Elias received a discreet message. "They know." The text glowed red on his screen. His hand clenched around the phone. Amara noticed. "What's wrong?" "They're accelerating," he said. "They want him declared brain dead before we can act." Fear settled in her chest like a stone. The clock above Lucien's bed ticked louder in her ears. Ward paced, thinking fast. "We have to get the antidote synthesized now. Chen can start, but he needs protection and time." Amara nodded, though her throat felt tight. "Then we give him both." Outside, rain began to fall against the glass, soft and steady. the calm before the storm. Somewhere downtown, Darius Voss smiled into the darkness, convinced he had already won. He didn't know a woman with nothing was about to stand between him and the grave he'd dug. Night settled heavy over Seattle. In Elias Ward's dim office, the sound of thunder rolled beyond the windows. Papers covered the desk. Court orders, medical results, vials labeled with handwritten codes. Amara sat across from him, exhausted but unyielding. Dr. Chen handed her a small vial filled with faint blue liquid. "The antidote," he said. "It needs to be administered directly into the IV. It will either bring him back, or it won't." She took it carefully, the glass cold in her palm. Elias looked at her, steady and grim. "We move before dawn. The declaration scheduled for 7. Darius plans the burial tomorrow afternoon." Amara nodded. "Then we go now." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating their faces. Her fear, his resolve, Chen's quiet determination. Ward tucked the court order into his coat. "You realize once we confront them, there's no turning back." Amara's voice was steady. There never was. For a moment, silence filled the room, the kind that comes before something irreversible. Then Ward picked up his keys. "Let's bring him home." The rain outside intensified, drumming like a heartbeat against the glass. Time was no longer an ally. It was the enemy counting down. By morning, news broke across Seattle. Tech billionaire Lucian Voss dies at 34. The headline flashed on every screen. Darius Voss stood before cameras, his expression a perfect mask of grief. "My brother was a visionary," he said smoothly. "The world has lost a light." Behind him, the preparations for a private funeral were already underway. White tents rose on the cliffs overlooking the Pacific, the Voss family mausoleum polished and waiting. Amara watched from Ward's office, fists clenched. Every word from Darius's mouth burned like acid. She turned to Elias. "He's celebrating before the body's even cold." Ward's tone was measured. "Let him. The louder he lies, the harder he'll fall." Reporters filled the news feeds with images of luxury cars, grieving socialites, the casket draped in silk. To the world, Lucian was gone. Another tragedy money couldn't prevent. But in the quiet corners of the city, 3 people prepared to prove otherwise. Ward folded a newspaper. "The service is tomorrow at 2. Amara looked up from the vial she still held close. "Then tomorrow," she whispered, "we open a grave and take back a life." The next day arrived under a gray sky. Wind swept across the cliffs as black cars lined the narrow road. Amara Layton sat in the back seat of Ward's sedan, her hands trembling in her lap. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw the white tent, the rows of mourners dressed in designer black, the gleam of cameras catching every tear. Inside the tent, the mahogany casket stood under soft lights surrounded by white lilies. Darius Voss stood at the front, head bowed in false sorrow. Amara's breath hitched. "It feels wrong," she whispered. Ward glanced at her. "That's because it is. But remember, every minute we wait, his heart slows." Her fingers tightened around the vial hidden in her sleeve. Outside, thunder rolled again, low and distant. A priest began to speak. "We gather today to honor the life of Lucian Voss." Each word felt like a countdown. Amara closed her eyes. She could almost hear Lucian's shallow breathing in her memory, the faint beeping of hospital machines. Ward touched her arm gently. "When I say the word, we move." She nodded once. The lie of a funeral had begun, but the truth, the living, dangerous truth, was waiting beneath that coffin lid. The priest's voice faded beneath the pounding in Amara Layton's chest. Every word felt like a nail sealing Lucian's coffin shut. Her pulse raced until one thought broke through the noise. "If I don't speak now, he dies." She opened the car door. Rain hit her face, cold and sharp. Her heels sank into the wet gravel as she started toward the tent. Each step felt heavier, louder. Heads turned. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elias Ward followed, calm but determined, his coat dark with rain. Darius looked up, confusion flashing in his eyes. Amara's breath trembled, but her voice did not. "Stop this," she said, loud enough for all to hear. "This isn't right." The priest paused mid-sentence. Cameras swiveled. Darius's mask of grief faltered. Elias's hand touched her shoulder, grounding her. "You're not alone," he whispered. Amara stepped closer to the casket, her voice shaking but clear. "You're burying a man who's still alive." The silence that followed was deep enough to hear the ocean crashing below the cliffs. And in that silence, Amara felt it. The shift from fear to courage. The moment her life and Lucienne's became bound by the same heartbeat. Elias Ward stepped beside Amara, raising his voice above the storm. "This isn't a funeral," he said evenly. "It's a crime scene." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters leaned forward, their cameras snapping to life. Darius Voss straightened, his face a picture of disbelief that quickly hardened into anger. "You have no proof," he spat. "This is madness." Ward held up the court order, its seal gleaming under the gray light. "Judge Morrison's authorization for an independent medical examination. Anyone who interferes will be charged with obstruction of justice." Darius's composure cracked. "You'll regret this," he hissed. Amara took a step forward. "The only one who'll regret anything is you. When everyone sees what you've done." The crowd murmured louder now, doubt spreading like fire. Darius tried to laugh, but the sound was brittle. "You're accusing me of murdering my own brother? Based on what? Her word?" Amara met his eyes, steady and unflinching. "Based on the truth." Ward motioned to the pallbearers. "Open it." The priest hesitated. Darius's shout broke through the noise. "Don't you dare!" But it was too late. Hands reached for the casket's locks. The rain fell harder, washing away pretense and lies alike. Metal clasps clicked open, the sound slicing through the crowd's hush. The lid lifted slowly, revealing Lucien Voss, motionless beneath the linen. Amara's breath caught. His skin was wax pale, his lips still. For a moment, doubt clawed at her chest. What if she was wrong? Elias moved closer, fingers to Lucien's neck. Seconds stretched thin, unbearable. Then his eyes widened. "There's a pulse," he whispered. "Faint, but it's there." A collective gasp swept through the mourners. Amara's knees almost gave out. "He's alive," she whispered, the words trembling through her lips. The crowd erupted. Reporters surged forward. The priest stumbled back. Darius lunged toward the coffin, rage contorting his face. "You're lying!" Ward blocked his path. "No, Darius, you are." Behind them, Dr. Chen appeared with his medical team, carrying equipment through the chaos. "Clear the area," Ward commanded. "He's still alive." Amara reached the casket, rain dripping from her hair. She looked down at Lucien, his chest barely rising. "Hold on," she whispered. "Please, hold on." For the first time since that night, she felt the air shift, like the world itself had chosen sides. The scene exploded into motion. Reporters shouted. Mourners screamed. The storm howled around the tent as if echoing the chaos inside. Darius Voss lunged again, shoving past security, his voice breaking into a snarl. "You'll destroy everything!" Elias Ward caught his arm, his calm replaced by fury. "You already did." Police officers moved in, their radios crackling. Dr. Chen's team worked fast, setting up equipment beside the coffin. Amara barely noticed the flashing cameras, the shouting, the rain hammering her shoulders. All she saw was Lucienne, pale, still, but not gone. Two officers grabbed Darius. He struggled, shouting curses. "You think you've won? You have no idea." Ward stepped closer, his voice steady. "No, Darius. We just saved the only thing you can't buy. A life." Darius jerked free for a second, turning his glare toward Amara. "You should have stayed silent." She met his hatred with quiet strength. "So should you." The officers dragged him away, his voice fading into the roar of the storm. And for the first time, Amara let herself breathe. Around her, chaos still raged. But somewhere inside that noise, hope was finally alive. Dr. Chen's hands moved quickly, drawing the blue antidote into a syringe. Elias Ward handed it to him, their eyes meeting in unspoken urgency. "Administering now," Chen said. The needle slid into Lucien's IV line. Amara leaned over the coffin, her hands trembling against the edge. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Come back." Seconds crawled. Nothing happened. Lucien's chest stayed still. Rain drummed louder against the tent roof. Then, a breath. Shallow, fragile, but real. His fingers twitched. The faintest sound escaped his throat, half a sigh, half a gasp. "He's breathing," Dr. Chen said. Amara covered her mouth, tears spilling down her face. The crowd's noise blurred into a dull hum. Lucien's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, searching. His lips moved, barely forming words. "An angel?" Amara shook her head, laughing through tears. "No, just someone who couldn't keep quiet." He blinked, confusion softening into peace. Behind them, police voices shouted, Darius screaming somewhere in the distance. None of it mattered. Lucien was alive. Against logic, against greed, against death itself. And Amara, soaked and shaking, realized she'd just witnessed a miracle. The moment courage turned into salvation. The storm passed, but the world didn't quiet. Within hours, every news outlet carried the story. Billionaire Lucien Voss found alive. Brother arrested for attempted murder. Darius Voss was taken into custody, his face plastered across screens, the headlines calling him the man who buried his own blood. The city buzzed with disbelief. Reporters camped outside the hospital. Cameras followed every movement of Amara Layton, the woman who had refused to stay silent. They called her the woman who saved a billionaire. The phrase echoed through talk shows, blogs, and front pages. But Amara didn't feel like a hero. She felt exhausted, fragile, lost in a world she had never belonged to. At St. Helena, Lucien remained under close care. His body was weak, his breathing shallow but steady. Amara visited quietly, away from the cameras. When she looked at him through the glass, she realized something had shifted. Not just in him, but in her. Money, fame, all the things she had once envied now looked hollow. The man she saved wasn't a headline. He was a human being who had come back from the edge of a grave, and somehow that made them equals. Weeks later, Lucien Voss regained strength. His doctors called it a miracle, but he credited something else, her voice. The one he swore he'd heard in the dark before waking up. Amara entered the room quietly, unsure if she was welcome. Lucien turned, a faint smile on his face. "I thought I dreamed you," he said softly. She smiled back. "You almost did." Silence filled the space between them, not awkward, peaceful. The world outside still talked about money, power, betrayal. Inside this hospital room, it was just two people breathing the same air, alive. Lucien's hand trembled as he reached for hers. "Thank you," he said simply. Amara shook her head. "Don't thank me. Anyone would have done the same." He met her eyes. "No, not anyone." The weight of that truth lingered. For the first time, Amara didn't feel invisible. She began visiting daily. They talked about nothing, about everything, about pain and second chances. Each conversation stitched something back together inside them both. And in the quiet hours between heartbeat and healing, something fragile began to grow. Trust. The weeks turned into months. Lucien Voss walked again, slower than before, quieter too. The man who once filled boardrooms with confidence now preferred silence. He sat by the hospital window one afternoon. The Seattle skyline stretched before him. Amara sat nearby, flipping through a newspaper filled with his name. He chuckled softly. "They still call me the miracle billionaire." She looked up. "You hate it." "I do," he admitted, "because I know what almost killed me wasn't fate. It was greed. Mine, his, everyone's." Amara said nothing. Lucien turned to her. "You saved my life, Amara," he said. "Not my fortune." The words were simple, but they landed deep. For the first time, she saw the man beneath the money. Weary, humbled, human. He reached into a folder beside him. Inside were plans for a new foundation. "I don't want to build things that make headlines anymore," he said. "I want to build something that lasts." Amara smiled. "Then start with the truth." Lucienne nodded slowly. "And with the people who remind me what it costs to live it." That day, both of them left a part of their old selves behind. Spring returned to Seattle with quiet rain and softer days. Lucien had left the hospital, his strength returning. Amara went back to work, but the calls began. Short at first, then longer. "What are you doing?" he would ask, his tone warm, teasing. "Working. Some of us don't own empires," she'd reply, smiling. Soon, calls turned into coffee. Coffee turned into dinners that stretched into midnight. They talked about everything: books, childhood, how fear changes people. Lucien laughed easily now, the sound surprising even himself. "I used to think survival meant power," he told her once. "Now I think it means kindness." Amara looked at him, her heart tightening in ways she didn't expect. The lines between gratitude and affection blurred slowly, naturally. One evening, as they walked along the waterfront, he stopped and said quietly, "You make life feel new." She didn't answer, only smiled. But in that silence, something answered for her. The woman who had once saved him was learning that love, too, can resurrect what was thought gone forever. A year passed. The headlines faded. Lucien Voss and Amara Layton built a quiet rhythm. Morning coffee, shared laughter, evenings spent in calm, ordinary peace. She moved into his home overlooking the water, though she still kept her small apartment in the city. "Just in case I need to remember who I am," she said. He understood. For a while, life was good. Then, one gray morning, a phone call shattered it. Elias Ward's voice came through, low and grim. "Lucien. It's about Darius." Lucien froze. What about him? There was an appeal. Evidence mishandled. The court overturned the part of his sentence. Lucien's face went pale. Amara's breath caught. "You mean—" "He's being released," Elias said. "In 3 weeks." Silence stretched. The sound of the sea filled it. Lucien sank into his chair. "After everything." Amara touched his hand. "We'll be careful." But fear had already found its way back into the room. Outside, the wind carried the faint smell of rain. The same scent as the day she first heard the voices through the vent. Peace, she realized, was never meant to last forever. It was only the pause before another storm. The peace began to crumble piece by piece. It started with letters. Unmarked envelopes slid under their door, each line colder than the last. "You took everything from me." Then came the phone calls. Silence on the other end. Breathing. Lucien Voss tightened security, but it wasn't enough. One morning, Amara found the tires on her car slashed. The next week, a brick shattered Lucien's office window with a note tied around it. Brothers are forever. Fear crept back into their lives. Amara tried to stay calm, but the city felt different now. Darker. Watching. Then, on a night of relentless rain, it happened. Amara stayed late at work, finishing reports. The office was empty except for the echo of rain against glass. She called Lucien, smiling through exhaustion. "I'll be home soon." As she packed her bag, footsteps sounded behind her. Slow, deliberate. Before she could turn, a hand clamped over her mouth. A voice she'd hoped never to hear again whispered near her ear. "Hello, Amara." Her body froze. Darius Voss was free, and he'd come to finish what he started. Rain pounded against the windows. Amara struggled, twisting in Darius's grip. His hand pressed against her throat, cutting her breath. "You took everything from me," he growled. "My company, my brother, my life." She tried to scream, but his hold was too tight. Her phone fell, the call still connected. At the other end, Lucien heard the crash, the muffled scream, the voice he recognized too well. "Sierra!" he shouted, panic breaking his voice. "Amara!" He was already running, keys in his shaking hand. The city blurred past in streaks of light and rain. Every second was agony. Up in the dark office, Darius shoved Amara to the floor. "He should have died when he had the chance," he spat. Amara gasped, clutching at his arm. "You'll never win." Darius raised his hand again, and the door burst open. Lucien charged in, soaked and shaking. "Get away from her!" Darius turned, his face twisting with hate. "Always the hero." The two men collided. Fists, blood, chaos. Years of rage exploding in one brutal moment. Amara could barely see, her vision fading. But she heard Lucien's voice, raw and breaking. "I'm not losing you again." When the police arrived, Darius Voss was on the ground, handcuffed and bleeding. But Amara Layton lay motionless beside the desk, her skin pale, lips trembling. Lucien dropped to his knees, pulling her into his arms. "Amara," he whispered, voice breaking. "Please, breathe for me." Her head lolled back. Nothing. He pressed his forehead to hers. "You saved me once," he said, tears mixing with the rain. "Now it's my turn. Just breathe." Her chest rose, faintly, barely. Then again, Lucien's sob turned into a laugh that sounded like prayer. That's it, love." Amara's eyes fluttered open. Her voice was a rasp. "You made it." He nodded, holding her tighter. "I'll always make it to you." Sirens wailed outside, lights flashing red and blue across the rain-slick floor. The officers took Darius away, his shouts lost in the storm. Lucien didn't look up. His world had narrowed to the woman breathing against his chest. The heartbeat he'd nearly lost twice. And in that fragile, trembling breath he understood. Some miracles don't come from heaven. They come from love that refuses to die. Months later, the courtroom was silent as the judge spoke. Darius Voss showed no emotion as he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The cameras caught his face, a hollow reflection of the man who once thought he could control everything. For Lucien and Amara, it wasn't victory. It was closure. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, but Amara didn't answer. She looked up at the gray sky and let the wind brush against her face. For the first time in years, she felt light. 6 months later, she stood inside a sunlit studio. On the mirrored walls hung a small sign, Layton Dance Studio, where every girl learns to rise. Children laughed, their feet tapping softly against the floor. Lucien leaned against the doorway, watching her. She turned and smiled. "They remind me of myself," she said, scared, but still moving. Lucien's eyes softened. "That's why they'll be unstoppable." Amara reached for his hand. The past would never vanish, but here, surrounded by music and hope, it no longer owned them. Somewhere far away, Darius lived out his sentence, and for the first time, Amara didn't think of him at all. Seattle's morning light broke across the water, soft and gold. Amara Layton stood beside Lucien Voss on the balcony of their home, the city waking below them. She leaned her head against his shoulder. For a long moment, neither spoke. The quiet said everything. Amara thought about the woman she had been. Afraid, invisible, alone. The one who had listened through a hospital vent and found a truth too heavy to carry. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who knew the cost of courage. Lucien took her hand. "We've been through hell," he murmured. "And came out human," she replied. He smiled. Amara looked toward the rising sun and whispered the words she'd learned the hard way. Love isn't about perfect beginnings. It's about choosing to fight, every single day, for the one who makes your life extraordinary. Lucien pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Then I'll keep fighting." As the city lights dimmed under the dawn, they stood hand in hand, survivors of greed, fear, and time itself. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share it, because courage, like love, deserves to be seen.